All right, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Barbell Life Show. Tony Camper here, coming from Hawaii. And it's funny because our guest today is across the pond out in the UK, Mr. Mark Smith, a.k.a. Britain's strongest disabled man. What's up, Mark?
Hey, mate, you all right?
Thanks for joining us. I think you're the first guest I've had that's been overseas like that. Most of the people we've talked to have been stateside. I think that, I really do think you're the first one we've done like this. So pretty awesome, man. It's an honor. How you doing?
Yeah, no, really good. Thank you for obviously inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Definitely, man. Mark's a member of the Barbell Life community. And so I saw his posts in the group a few times, and I was like, I got to get this guy on the show. Definitely easier said than done. I've been trying to track Mark down for a while now. He's been playing hard to get, but finally cracked him and got him on the show. So glad to have you, man. One of the things is when you post to the group, you don't do it all the time, but when you do, there's 38,000 of us, and everyone comes out and shows you just a ton of support, a ton of likes, a ton of comments, and because you have an amazing story to tell, and it's really inspirational. So it was a no-brainer to try to get you on the show. So here we are finally. So we'll start from the beginning. You're from the UK. Which part of UK are you from?
Milton Keynes. So.
I don't know why I ask like I know England. Us Americans are so what's the word? We're so arrogant that we don't take the time to learn other people's stuff. We just want them to know our stuff. But okay, so you're from England. When you were growing up as a kid, were you into fitness, anything like that, sports?
Yeah, I played a lot of football. That took up the majority of my childhood, to be honest.
Well, let me stop you real quick. When you say football, you're talking about soccer, right?
I mean real football, yeah.
Yeah. So you played football. Go ahead.
Yeah, that took up pretty much Monday to Sunday. All my childhood was about, like, in the evenings after school, I'll be playing football. At weekends, I'll be playing for a team. So, yeah, that was most of my childhood, and I loved it. It was, I suppose that was all that mattered then. But yeah, so, football was my main thing.
A lot of football, a lot of running around, a lot of cardio as a kid. Okay.
Yeah.
So you definitely had that competitive nature even as a kid, right?
Yeah.
I know football's huge out there. So so you played football. Did you do anything else? Did you lift weights, anything like that?
Not as a child, no. That only really sort of started once I sort of joined the army, to be honest.
Okay. Growing up, did you have any role models, especially any out there from the UK?
I wouldn't say like in the field that I'm in now. I've always been quite single-minded, quite stubborn, and I knew from quite a young age what I wanted to do in my life, where I wanted to go, and I was one of them that no matter sort of which adult, which teacher, anyone like that sort of tried to guide me otherwise, I knew the sort of path I wanted to go down. So I wouldn't really say my life choices came from looking up to anyone as a child, no.
Now, when you were growing up, who were some athletes that were, so for me, we had Michael Jordan, Emmett Smith, Deion Sanders, big names like that. Did you have anybody like that? Mike Tyson, I know you like boxing, so.
Yeah, no, Tyson's definitely up there. I would say, yeah, Mike Tyson, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Arnold.
and then yeah, the English lads watching would probably know the likes of sort of Stuart Pearce. He was probably my role model as a footballer. I watched a lot of his game, played in the same position, so yeah, I looked up to him a lot.
Okay. I have no clue who that is, but I'll Google just so I'm not so ignorant. All right, so
his nickname was Psycho. So
Psycho, nice.
yeah.
I'm sure your parents were thrilled that was your role model, some guy named Psycho.
Yeah.
All right, so you pretty much knew what you're gonna do. Now, once you became an adult, you joined the military, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that. What's your your military background?
So as soon as I was 18, I knew, again, quite sort of single-minded. Once that decision was made, I had various people sort of suggesting that I went for a trade of some sort, a mechanic, an engineer, a signaller, things like that, so that a lot of people were looking past my army career before I'd had it. And again, that stubbornness in me, the way I saw the military was as a fighting soldier, an infantryman. So in my mind, I wanted to join and do that. I wanted to go on operational tours. I wanted to be a fighting soldier. And so, yeah, I chose the infantry route. And I joined at 18, and I loved every second of it. It's something that I would definitely still be doing had I not had my injury. But I think I've got a lot to take from it that's helping me on the sort of path that I'm on now. I think there's a lot of positives to sort of take forward in life.
Now, how long were you in the military?
I served 10 years. 10 years.
Wow. Okay. And you're a war veteran, so tell me about some of the deployments you were on.
So my first operational tour, I was only 19, and it was the first Christmas I'd had to spend away from home. I was in Bosnia. I spent 6 months there. Bosnia included a lot of sort of house searches, stopping sort of drug trafficking, human trafficking, all that sort of stuff, which as a young lad on my first tour was a real eye-opener, and I really enjoyed the experience. I then went to Iraq for 6 months, which again, those were the sort of places when I was younger that you could see coming up on the news and stuff, and that's where you wanted to go. You want to sort of go and put into practice the things that you've learned as a soldier. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough to spend a few months in Baghdad, and then my next operational tour was Afghanistan, which was, I think, the sort of turning point in my career, where I think the one thing sort of everyone says is, you'll never know how you'll react in a situation until you're in that situation. And it's one of the things where I can have a bit of peace of mind with my career, that when it came to doing our job, being in contacts, firefights, I can sort of look at myself in the mirror and know that when it came to doing my job for real as such, that I was up to it and I was capable of it. And I sort of found my home there. It was strange. I almost felt quite comfortable in Afghanistan. It felt like that was the sort of role, that was the sort of place I was supposed to be. I found myself in the middle of sort of times when it might not be natural to be enjoying yourself, sort of laughing and joking, and I really felt quite comfortable in those scenarios. And it was probably the one thing in life where I actually sort of felt I was good at my job, and it was sort of that whole sort of path as a sort of teenager wanting to join the army up to that point of sort of being in Afghanistan, it was all worth it.
Well, you said when you were a kid, you knew what you wanted to do. So your whole life growing up, you were visualizing being a soldier and being in combat and all these things. So you kind of had that moment of Zen, like, this is what I've always thought of. This is what I've always dreamt. And here I am doing what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you saw a lot of combat, things like that. You're definitely, you have war experience. You're a war veteran. From one vet to another, thank you for your service. Let me throw that out there. I spent a little time in Afghanistan, so I kind of feel you there. I got the little ribbon. We can trade stories, but I got nothing on you. So much respect. Now, when your injury, this didn't happen in combat, right?
No.
Okay. Tell me about your injury and kind of walk me through what happened, like from the beginning.
So you'll probably know yourself that obviously before you go on a deployment, you'll spend quite a lot of time away from home, training, preparing to go away on tour. And that's no different with us. The British Army, to go to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, we tend to go to like Kenya, Canada, and it was whilst we was preparing to return to Afghanistan for our tour in 2012. We spent the summer of 2011 in Canada. Canada is an ideal place to train. You've got hundreds of miles of land on the prairie that we've got access to, that where they've built Afghan villages, things like that. So it's the most in-depth sort of realistic training you could get, especially for the young lads who've yet to sort of go on tour. And
they try to make it look like where you're gonna be.
Yeah,
they got the villages set up, and it's like a mock scenario. Just paint the picture for the audience out there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was the sort of environment I was in, and it came to helping another regiment through their sort of compound clearances, bunker clearances, all that sort of thing. And it was whilst one of the rifle sections was clearing a compound that one lad was one side of the wall with a light machine gun, and I was the other side of the wall, and the rounds came through the wall and through the back of me and hit my artery in my right leg and my right shoulder. So what was obviously as a training exercise, part of your sort of role was to pass on sort of casualties. So to give those lads on the ground the opportunity to get used to casualty evacuations, treating casualties on the ground. So, you would sort of say, right, the lad next to you, he's just lost his leg. You need to treat him. Right, what are you going to do? And then this situation quickly turned from role play as such to obviously the
real thing
situation. Yeah. And then I owe my life sort of solely down to the lads that responded sort of quickly to what happened to me on the ground on the day. The safety staff around me were all sort of really experienced lads as well, and could see the damage to my leg. And yeah, it's sort of solely down to them that I'm still here. They were able to clamp off the artery and save my life.
Now, so you had to get evacuated to the hospital. I'm guessing they did tourniquets and all that.
Yeah. The difference is because this was a an exercise scenario as opposed to an operational tour. The regiment that we were training, they didn't have morphine and stuff like that with them. So the whole time I was waiting for the heli to be evacuated, this was without any sort of pain relief. So I had 2 tourniquets attached. I had my artery clamped off. I had some hemorrhage control in my right shoulder to the gunshot that was there. And this was all just me having to suck it up. Without as much as a paracetamol. So
you didn't pass out or anything like that?
I came close at one point. It was strange. I felt this really sort of calm, relaxed feeling. Nice, warm and cozy. And one of the lads could obviously sort of see that and sense it. So he punched me in the face, and it worked. I was just annoyed then. Yeah, I was just annoyed that I'd been hit in the face. So, but that was enough to sort of keep me sort of conscious, and then not long after that, the heli turned up and I was away.
Now, so you were conscious for this whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they took you to the hospital, and then I'm guessing that's when they, gave you some drugs and kind of started surgery and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously they put you under, and I'm guessing you woke up, and what'd they do from there? What did they do with your leg and your shoulder?
To be honest, I remember, I think I was on life support for about 2 days, and
they put you under.
Sorry?
They put you under.
Yeah. I had to be resuscitated on a few occasions as well. I think mainly due to the blood loss from the arterial bleed. So I was under for a couple of days, and when I came off life support, I was really confused as to the fact that my wife was there. So the British Army had flown my wife over. So yeah, I remember sort of being quite confused as to the fact that I was in a hospital bed in Canada and my wife was stood there. So it was all a bit sort of surreal. And then the atmosphere sort of quickly changed to a doctor putting a consent form in front of me to say that we're amputating your leg. I'd had friends in the past who had lost limbs on previous operational tours, and I'd seen the ones that had sort of made a lot of progress and the ones that were struggling. And I sort of pleaded to become a below knee. If I was going to have my leg amputated, I wanted it to be below the knee. It just seemed that the lads that still had their own knees went on to walk really well, run, almost sort of return to work. And as it happened, that wasn't the case. I think I started off as a through knee, and I was still sort of really ill. And then bit by bit, operation by operation, I ended up sort of about mid-thigh now.
So they had to keep doing more surgeries and cut more and more off.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? Is it just because of infection, or?
I think it came about because it took quite some time to get me airlifted to hospital, and then to get me sort of into theatre. So I'd had the tourniquets on for a number of hours, and when I came round, I remember them sort of obviously trying to see if I had a pulse in my foot, and as much as I wanted to say yes, I can feel that, like there was nothing there. And I'd started to get organ failure. So I had a number of drains coming off of my leg, and the sort of the fluid that was running from my legs was black. And these were having to be changed quite frequently. So that was starting to give me sort of organ failure. So yeah, what was left of the leg was damaged. So they basically had to sort of take until they'd got past the infection.
How many surgeries did you end up having total?
I think it currently stands at 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why so many?
I had a number of infections with my leg, and I've had further surgeries later on down the line where bits of excess bone have grown off the femur, which has made it really uncomfortable to walk. So that's had to be shaved away. So I've had plenty of sort of revision surgeries. I've had to go back in to have a little bit more of the leg taken, where initially it wouldn't heal, it wouldn't close up. The femur was sort of protruding from the end of the stump, so they had to then take that away. So I had a couple of surgeries on my shoulder to have that closed up. The exit wound that I had in my groin, that was one of the last operations I had. It was a sort of fist sort of depth. The lad who had gone to put his hand on my exit wound to apply pressure, his hand went inside my leg, so he ended up having to put his knees on. So that sort of gives you an idea of how big the exit wound was, and that took like quite a long time to close up. So it was all operations like that I was having to have. So yeah, I got pretty used to seeing an anaesthetist. So.
Now, are you good on your surgeries and you're done, or you still got to go back for some more stuff, you think?
I would say I'm probably due another operation, yeah. My leg is causing me quite a bit of discomfort at the minute.
Does this become the bone again?
Yeah, it feels like you sort of... The unfortunate thing is that the consultant said most people will have this once or twice. This is about the 5th or 6th time I've had this same sort of excess bone growing off the femur, and obviously each time it's sort of affecting my walking. So yes, it's quite painful. So I sort of get the feeling with me that's going to be an ongoing thing. I'll probably have a few more surgeries to do with that again.
Now, you know, with the bodybuilding and the strongman and all that, does that have an effect on your injury? Does it make it worse? Does it cause pain? Things like that?
I would say the bodybuilding probably made it worse. Once you would start to cut and lose body fat, obviously that means, you know, you lose fat from everywhere. So what I've got left of my amputated leg, I would lose fat from there as well, which meant it felt more like just skin and bone. Yeah, it felt more like just sort of skin and bone, and so it was a lot more uncomfortable to walk. And obviously, with your glutes and stuff, where you start to lose body fat from your glutes, that would also sort of affect my walking. So, and then when it comes to strongman, where I weigh a lot more now, it's also putting more pressure on my leg, because the fact that it's having to sort of cope with the extra weight now of walking.
It's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize. A lot of people don't realize, like, body fat is there for a reason. It has its role. You know, it's cushioning, it's protecting organs, it's doing all these things. So I can only imagine, you know, you're losing all that body fat, and you know, it's just straight bone on muscle. Probably you're more sensitive with your nerves and things like that. So what about your shoulder? How is the shoulder injury? I mean, it looks like you got decent shoulder, so it doesn't look like too much happened, huh?
As far as like appearance goes, it didn't really affect me in bodybuilding. I was able to sort of, from a distance, they still look quite symmetrical. So I never really noticed it too much when I was bodybuilding, but since I've gone into strongman, there's a lot more overhead strength needed for things like sort of log pressing, axle pressing, things like that. So I've more noticed the difference in my shoulder strength. So it more, the one thing it really affects, we'll have at some competitions, you'll have endurance holds, and one of the holds is the crucifix. So you're holding 2 weights out to your side, and your arms are supposed to be sort of locked out, and that is sort of near on impossible for me with any weight. So there's I mean, obviously in disabled strongman, everyone's got something that affects them in some way, and that's my thing. So
now, was there a lot of nerve damage? Did they have to remove a lot of muscle and things like that?
I lost my anterior deltoid, so I lost the front of my shoulder, which should obviously affect anything. I've still got sort of full range of movement. I can still move the arm as good as I could if I hadn't had the shoulder injury. But yeah, the loss of strength there when it comes to an incline press, an overhead press, holding something out laterally. Yeah, that's when I notice it.
Well, all right. So after your surgeries, you kind of had a new lease on life. How did you go from there as far as, okay, what's done is done. I've lost my leg. I've lost part of my shoulder. I can either be, feel bad for myself and just kind of get pity, or I can move forward and be the best that I can be. What was your thought process, during the recovery and the rehabilitation and basically, learning to live life again?
I think it was a few different reasons. One of them, obviously, having so many surgeries. I was nil by mouth a lot of the time. So obviously, when I'm waiting to go down to the operating theatre, I wouldn't be able to eat. And even when I could eat, the constant morphine meant that everything tasted sort of quite foul, to be honest. So I never really had an appetite in hospital. So I lost a hell of a lot of weight, and I hated my appearance because of that. And that was initially why I went into bodybuilding, because I wanted to get as far away from that lack of physique that I had in hospital as possible, and to sort of prove I could sort of do it. And I think my other sort of thing that pushed me on, after coming to terms with the fact that I was going to lose my military career, was I've got 2 little boys, and I was sort of very proud to have sort of been a soldier, and I wanted to sort of do things where I could still be a good role model for them, still sort of show them what it is to sort of work hard and stuff. And that whole sort of no excuses thing, it's if they see me missing a leg and pulling trucks and things like that, then hopefully they'll grow up with a mentality of working hard.
That makes sense, man. I just pulled this picture up, and you talk about your boys. Yeah. Now, this is you can see the difference just from talking to you now and this guy in this chair right here.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you off air, I didn't even recognize who this was. I was like, who's this guy in these pictures he's sending me?
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, the difference is crazy.
Yeah.
So you basically were determined to change your appearance.
Yeah. It's when your own friends are walking past you in hospital because they don't recognize you, and the only thing that they recognize you for is your regimental T-shirt that you're wearing in your hospital bed. Mm-hmm. That was quite sort of hard to take. And so as soon as I was discharged from hospital and I started my rehabilitation, my very first day, I still had a vacuum pack attached to my leg because of an ongoing infection. I was still in a wheelchair. I only weighed 8-9 stone, and I went straight to the gym. And it sort of became a sort of antidepressant for me, a bit of therapy. That was my sort of medication, and I got quite addicted to the feeling of seeing that transformation in the mirror of myself, not beginning to look well again.
Let me translate for the American viewers back home. 8'9" stone is 112 pounds. So you were really small. How tall are you?
6'2".
Oh wow. So that's even, geez, that's
Yeah,
skin and bones. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I have a little story kind of where I can relate to what you're saying to an extent, not even close to what you've been through. Had ACL surgery, lost weight, was depressed, things like that. And you know, when you have an ACL surgery, your quad just shrinks, like because you don't use it, and it just shrivels away quickly. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Um, and you mentioned therapy, going to the gym and it helping you feel better, and it became addictive. And it really is like that. When I couldn't work out and I was I was bedridden and all these things, it was depressing. And against doctor's orders, I go to the gym, and it was the only thing that made me feel good. Your brain's releasing those endorphins. You feel productive. You feel active. You're clearing your mind. You're being able to focus, things like that. Like, people don't realize how therapeutic and how powerful, this fitness lifestyle really is. So it's awesome to hear you say that was a big part of your recovery.
yeah.
So how did you just go into the gym and start lifting, or did you have a trainer, or how did you kind of get to the point where you are now, to where you put on so much size and muscle from the 112 pound, 8 stone guy that we saw in those pictures?
No, a lot of it was, so when you get to your rehabilitation centre, you're given the walk around. You're shown all the facilities where all your sessions like physio, PT, things like that are going to be. So all your gym based work. And as soon as that had finished, I just sort of wheeled my wheelchair straight back down to the gym again. And yeah, it was all, I suppose you probably spend quite a lot of time on your own, because I suppose everybody deals with their injuries in different ways, and some of those lads like to use their free time to watch the television, sort of lay on their beds, or sort of go down the NAFI, which is like obviously the British sort of a bar for the military. And I would spend all of my free time down the gym. So yeah, I was just trying to sort of learn as I was going along.
So you went from 100, you went from 8 stone, and how long did it take till you started really seeing, a difference in your body, and, putting on the muscle and things like that?
From the point of injury, so 2011, my first bodybuilding show was November 2014. So it took me a good 3 years to start putting on some weight. And then obviously since the bodybuilding and into Strongman, I've carried on putting that on. So thankfully, like at Headley Court, which is the British sort of rehabilitation centre for the military, the food there was decent. So I was able to get the sort of good calories in that I needed. And obviously I was always going up for second helpings and stuff like that. So, I was...
I can see that, man. I'm jealous. Okay, so you're rehabbing and you decide you want to do bodybuilding. How did that come about?
To be honest, a lot of lads were looking at the Paralympics. That was a big thing that was being pushed at Headley Court, and a lot of the things didn't interest me, didn't excite me. And I'd read a story about the first disabled bodybuilding competition to have taken place in England. And so I read up on it more and more, got in touch with the people that had taken part in it, and wanted to see if there was going to be any more. And it just happened that there was one in about 5 months from the point of where I'd read about it. And then I did sort of, rather than training myself, I did then moved gyms to a more bodybuilding specific sort of gym, and asked the lads there that were a lot more sort of experienced in that than I was. And I thought it was a good challenge. It was the first thing that excited me. It was the first thing where it gave me a chance to be looked at on stage for what I've got left rather than what I'm missing. I think that was the biggest thing. So rather than, I'd got so used to people looking at me as an amputee, as someone missing a leg, and bodybuilding would give me a chance to be looked at on stage for what I'd built, what I'd sort of worked hard at, and not what I was missing. So
instead of feeling sorry for what you didn't have, they were admiring what you did.
Yeah, and that was sort of mentally that was a real sort of big boost for me, that I wasn't looked at as a disabled person, which is probably the sort of, to go from being a soldier to a disabled person. I didn't want to just sort of blend in with numbers. I wanted to show what, you've had so many surgeons, doctors, people advise you what you shouldn't do, what, the sort of life you should then live, or the sort of life that you're going to have the older you get, the more the amputation is going to affect you. And those were just the people who fueled that fire more to go and say, right, I'm going to prove you wrong. This can be done. And that's how I've sort of, as an amputee, that's sort of how I've lived my life, is trying to prove people wrong and sort of change those sort of expectations, those boundaries.
Now, has anyone ever, the naysayers, and I don't say that in a negative way, but, people that told you shouldn't or you couldn't, has anyone eaten their words and said, you know what, I'm glad you didn't listen to me, you're right, you proved me wrong, kind of thing?
Not so much in that way, but I was really surprised once I started to make a name for myself. I think the thing that sort of began to put me off bodybuilding a little bit are the sort of negative comments. And I had so many people messaging me, or I would be featured in a newspaper, and then you would read the article comments and stuff that people had left online, and it was all about how grotesque I looked and how disgusting I was, and it, it was supposed to be a positive thing, and although I wasn't being judged, those comments I don't feel were made about the fact that I was an amputee. They were made on my appearance, which obviously I'd spent months and months dieting, training, sort of giving up my own life, my own family life, really. I'd from morning till night, that took over, and I think it took over too much, possibly. And to put in all that time and effort, and then have people sort of knock you down and say how hideous and horrible it looks, when in my eyes I looked horrible when I was in hospital, and that picture of myself in the wheelchair, that was me looking horrible. That was something I hated.
There's always going to be people like that, and the people that say these things, and you see it a lot with female bodybuilders or just females in general who lift weights. It's always the people who don't do it who are the ones who criticize and make the comments, because they see somebody doing something that maybe deep down in the back of their head they wish they could do, or they think they can't do. So instead of admiring and giving that person props, they have to try to take them down a peg in order to make themselves feel better. All that is just insecurities on their part. I guarantee, and you can attest for this, more people have given you, your props and congratulated you for what you've done, compared to the few that have, tried to, diminish what you've done through their words. Am I right? Yeah. It's for anybody. I mean, you see anybody who's successful, or anyone who has some kind of doing something that not everyone does, there's always going to be the haters out there, the naysayers, things like that. And like you said, you just kind of use it to fuel your fire and push you more. So I'm glad a lot of people, they read those things and they can't handle it, and it'll derail their progress or get them to stop completely. So it takes a strong mind to be able to see past that stuff and ignore it and keep moving forward. So much respect there. So before we move on from bodybuilding, I want to pull this up because this is pretty awesome. You did a couple bodybuilding shows, right?
Yeah.
And you did what? The Phil Heath Classic?
Yeah.
All right. Now tell me about this right here, because this is pretty awesome.
So basically, after my first competition,
you there? I lose you? Uh-oh. Mark. Oh, man, I think I lost him. Well, this is what happens when you do live shows. Hopefully he pops back on. But, yeah, let's see something. Technology, man, it's a pain in the ass. Well, I'll just keep talking. Hopefully he pops back on. All right, so here's Mark. He's at the Phil Heath Classic. Guy on the left. You guys know him, Phil Heath. 6-time Mr. Olympia, reigning Mr. Olympia right now. So here's our guest, Mark Smith, on stage flexing with Phil Heath. It's fucking awesome. How many people can say that? How many people have a picture like that? It's amazing, and I'm bummed that he popped out just right now. I want to hear about this. Let's see, Mark, you there? I'll pull up another picture in the meantime. So everybody watching, sorry for the technical difficulties. Either Mark's internet was having issues or it's a bad connection. But it's one of those things that happens when you do, a live broadcast, especially, I'm in Hawaii and he's in the UK. So that's a big distance. But I'll just keep pressing in the meantime. Hopefully he pops back on. These things have happened before. Want to be the first time. But yeah, here he is again on stage with Phil Heath. Yeah, that's so awesome. Such bragging rights. I would just get a shirt made and just walk around with this. Oh yeah, that's me with Phil Heath posing. No biggie. Pretty awesome. One thing I want to point out too is look at his arms compared to Heath's. Like, that's pretty badass when you can hang with Mr. Olympia. But yeah, this is fucking awesome. I'm jealous. We got to get Mark back on here so we can hear his story. Man, what a pain in the ass. For those viewers who are still staying online, much respect. I figured you guys would punch out. Let me see. Be patient with me, guys. I'm gonna see if I can get him back on. But yeah, thank you everyone who's came onto the show. If we can't get him back on, we'll have to finish it another time. It says he's back on, but I don't see him. Can you see me? Can you hear me, Mark? Okay, so he logged off. Let's see if he pops back on. There he is.
Oh, sorry about that.
I was winging it, brother. All right, so I was showing everybody your pictures, trying to bide some time till you got back on. Let's finish where we left off, though, since I got you back. All right, so we were about to talk about you being on stage with Phil Heath. So
Yeah.
tell me about how this came about.
So basically, when I did my first bodybuilding show in England, it had gone quite sort of big on social media over here, and it just so happened that someone called Lee Thompson, who at the time was running the NPC in America, he'd seen the videos of myself up on stage and had said, "Oh, we run a disabled bodybuilding competition. Mark should come and do it." At the time, I thought it was one of my army friends messing about, to be honest. And then, so I messaged the bloke, and I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, we run there's the Phil Heath Classic. It's in March. It's in Houston. You should come over." So once I realised it was genuine, I jumped at the chance, and yeah, it's probably the hardest I've ever dieted, the hardest I've ever trained, and
that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I flew out there sort of thanks to my regiment. We're really well looked after. The Grenadier Guards, we have a regimental charity that looks after the injured lads, so the Colonel's Fund, and they funded my flights to America to make it possible.
Oh, wow.
And it was, so I did my my individual sort of routine and my posing and stuff in the morning at the sort of prelims, and the bloke Lee Thompson, who had invited me over, had said, "Oh, we've got a bit of a surprise for you this evening." So the show was broken down into two parts, and when I come back for the evening, I mean the response, I sort of fell in love with America, like when I was over there, like the sort of the way everybody is towards sort of veterans, the military. I got such an amazing reception on stage, and when I went back out there, the whole arena sort of stood up, and they sort of announced that I'd come over all the way over from England, and that I'd been in the forces, and everybody was stood up and clapping, and to the point where I couldn't hear my routine music. So I stopped on stage, and it was quite sort of overwhelming. And once I'd finished, one of the security had asked me to wait by the stage. So I thought I'd done something wrong, and I stood there waiting, and then all the lights went down, and Phil Heath himself come out to do his guest pose, and then he was interviewed on stage, and then they started to talk about the fact that there's this soldier that's flown over from England, and then I was called out on the microphone to come and join him on stage, and it was, yeah, unreal. He was such a nice bloke. I got the opportunity to sort of talk to him for quite a while, and yeah, it was literally like a once in a lifetime experience. And that I mean, when I come back to England, I remember turning on my phone at Heathrow Airport when we landed, and that was everywhere. And it was everything I'd said about why I wanted to do bodybuilding, as getting as far away from that ill person I was in hospital to a physique I could be sort of proud of, and I could be judged on for that and not my amputation, and all of that time in between, learning to walk again, run again, adjust to not being in the forces anymore, trying to sort of find my new path, all those sort of things at that moment in time on stage, it was like, wow, like it was almost all worth it. Like maybe not the amputation, but
I
but yeah,
mean,
everything else.
coming to that highlight, I mean, people dream of doing something like that, and you know, to share the stage with Mr. Olympia, and you know, to that effect is just amazing. I mean, bragging rights for life.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I did a show once, and just going on when it's time to pose is nerve wracking enough. I can imagine them saying, "Okay, come on over here and pose with Phil Heath." Like, shit myself, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Crazy.
no different.
Well, that's pretty awesome, man. I remember first seeing that picture, and I was like, "Wow, this is insane." Um, so that was pretty much, that's where you can just go, okay, I've bodybuilded with Phil Heath. I'm done.
Yeah.
Nothing left to prove. Um, so from there, you moved on, and you tell me how you got into strongman.
So basically, um, Disabled Strongman had been running in Iceland for some 13, 14 years previous, without sort of expanding to other countries. And as it was sort of growing, there were several people from the likes of America, Great Britain, over to like Australia and places like that, that wanted to then run their own qualifiers. So Britain's Strongest, America's Strongest, as qualifiers for the world's strongest disabled man. And the first year it was run, I was invited to, you know, would I be interested? And this was 2015. And the thing that put me off at the time, again, that sort of stubbornness kicking in, was that it was wheelchair. It was wheelchair competing. And the thing that put me off a wheelchair was not long after I'd come out of hospital, you know, going from being sort of 6'2" to sat down at most people's sort of waist length, um, is that people sort of speak to you differently or not at all. There was an occasion where I was with my wife, but the people that we'd sort of bumped into asked my wife how I was.
In front of you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that really left. Uh, that really made a mark on me. And I said, once I'm on a prosthetic leg, I never want to go in a wheelchair again. And I'd stuck to that for so long. If I couldn't wear my leg, even after an operation, I would go onto crutches. I was so adamant that I wouldn't go in a wheelchair again. And so the first year that Disabled Strongman came to Great Britain, I turned down the chance because I still associated being in a wheelchair as, you know, a bad thing. And so I carried on competing in bodybuilding for the rest of that year. And I think, like you said, obviously, once you've been on stage with Phil Heath, it's not going to get any better than that.
That's the
And
highlight right there.
none of the shows I did after gave me that same rush, that same adrenaline, that same excitement. And, you know, with the dieting and stuff, it was then a chore as opposed to something that was worthwhile. And then the opportunity came up again for 2016, and it was to come down and try, basically like an open day, to have a go at the events in Disabled Strongman and to see if you like it. So there was plenty of us going down, and I think it came at the right time where I was looking for something else, looking for another challenge. And so I went down and I had a brilliant day. And I knew even on the journey home, that's what I want to do. So
You were hooked right after that, huh?
yeah, that it was the thing I've always enjoyed is strength. And with the bodybuilding, it's obviously everyone that steps up on that stage is judged on their appearance rather than what they're capable of. So your efforts in the gym aren't really apparent. Whereas this strongman there's a clear winner. There's there's someone. It's not opinion based. It's based solely on whoever,
you.
whoever sort of pulls it out the bag on the day. And
I feel you, man. 100%
they're
there.
they're a sort of a worthy winner as such, but they've earned that, and I really
It's not
liked the
subjective.
appeal. Sorry?
I said it's not subjective. Pretty
Yeah.
much you determine if you win or not.
Yeah. If you've won, it's purely on merit, and I liked that. It was all of the enjoyment of being able to train in the gym still, and to be able to test. I think the thing with Strongman previous was that although I never had the self-confidence enough to believe I was strong, and it was only once I was training with sort of different friends that they'd started to comment on my strength, and that sort of built up a bit more self-belief that okay, maybe I could do okay at it. And this training day went really well. I really enjoyed it. I moved a lot more sort of weight than I expected to, and the organizer said, why don't you do this year's Britons? And it was only about 6 weeks away. And I sort of contemplated it for a couple of days, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to have a go at it. And so I had to invest in all my own sort of kit, like Atlas stones and things like that. And I sort of headed down for Britain's Strongest, which was my first competition, with not really any expectations. I would have been happy to have come top 10, to be honest. And it was something long term for me to get stuck into, and obviously sort of coming from a military background where you're always around groups of blokes and you're always sort of having a laugh, and whenever the opportunity sort of comes about, and I'd sort of missed that in bodybuilding. You spend a lot of time on your own, and the whole atmosphere of being at a strongman competition, everybody's willing each other on, everybody's sort of having a laugh together, and the whole setup of the day was so enjoyable that, you know, I could have come last at the Britons last year and I would have still had a fantastic day, but as it happens, it went a lot better than that.
Now the Britons is the strongest disabled athlete.
Yeah.
Okay, and is this the one that you won? Because you're Britain's strongest disabled man, right? That's your title.
Yeah, well, hopefully for a long time yet, but yeah, at least for the next few weeks.
But you're not giving up that crown, huh?
No, I really like. We've got Britain's Strongest again in a month's time, and yeah,
You're gonna defend the title.
It's not something that I want to sort of, now that I've had that to my name, and you know, I had to earn that through sort of hard work. Is something I want to keep.
All right. Well, this is pretty awesome, man. And I get what you're saying. You know, I stepped on stage once. I did well. It was a unique experience. I enjoyed, you know, the whole process of seeing yourself change, and you know, the what's it called, the dedication and discipline that's required, and just like I said, the whole process, learning to pose, practicing, watching your body change, things like that, to, you know, pre-show, show, post-show. You know, it's a great experience. But I powerlift, so powerlifting is night and day from bodybuilding, and I love powerlifting for the same reasons you said you love the strongman, because of the camaraderie. You know, you're training with people. It's a very supportive environment. You know, when I did my bodybuilding show, it was just kind of me. You're backstage. There's a bunch of guys, or like you'd say, blokes, that were sitting around, you know, getting a pump on and kind of looking at each other. And it's very competitive, but not in a positive. I don't want to say negative, but it's just very, cutthroat in a sense, compared to powerlifting, where you may be competing against guys, but they're cheering you on and rooting for you, and everyone's excited and cheering, and it's just so much more positive and exciting. And like you said, even if you lose, you still had a great time, and you really genuinely want everyone to do well and get their lifts and things like that. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. Now, before I wrap up, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, and this is pretty big, I think. When you were a soldier, you were also a guard for the Royal Palace, right?
Yeah.
Now tell me about that, because I don't think a lot of people can say that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so obviously, like when the Americans come to visit London, they'll see. It always seems to be a big attraction for people is to watch the changing of the guard, is to see the guards outside the palaces, the Tower of London, and Windsor Castle, and so to be honest, it's a role that at the time you didn't fully appreciate, because it was a lot of extra cleaning, like a lot of time spent doing kit. So making sure your boots were immaculate, your belt's immaculate, everything had to be perfect, and you're so highly inspected when it comes to going on guard, that any less than that and you get torn to pieces by the sergeant major, which I know from experience. So at the time, it's a very sort of proud thing to do, and it's only once, like sort of now that I'm not serving anymore, that I realised how sort of lucky I was to have been able to do that. And there's only 5 guards regiments in the British Army, one of them being the Grenadier Guards, which is what I served in, who will wear a tunic and bearskin, and will man the palaces. So it's considered quite
an honor.
Sort of an honor, yeah, a real big sort of privilege. And it's something now we go back down to our regiment's barracks. So every summer they'll open it up for like a family's day, and now that my 2 children, they'll see lads dressed up in tunic and bearskin, and they're fascinated, and I'm able to say to them, that's what I did,
Yeah, your
and
dad.
now it's something to be proud of.
Well, it's definitely awesome, and that's why I had to backtrack and definitely cover that, because that's not something you overlook. It's pretty amazing. Your whole story has been awesome, man, and I definitely had to make it a point to get you on the podcast. I mean, I know I tried several times, and I was like, you know what? I saw you post earlier in the week, and I was like, you know what? I got to try to get this guy on the show. Like, I'm not going to give up. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. And, your story is very inspirational. It's motivating. Like, no bullshit. As soon as we get done with this, I plan to go to the gym. Like, I'm fired up. I want to go hit some weights. And, it's almost as if your life after the accident has been 10 times more amazing than before. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have this crazy story to tell, and you've done so much and achieved so much since losing your leg, when, most people would think, okay, you lose a leg, life goes downhill, you're disabled, they feel bad for you, but you definitely did the opposite and made something great out of something bad. So definitely inspirational. I know, you said you're a football coach now, you're a personal trainer, you're a boxing coach, which intrigues me because, as we talked off air, I'm a big boxing fan. I've loved boxing. I've even been in the gym a few times, training and stuff. And And before I let you go, I want to get this on air so it's forever documented. Tomorrow night's fight, Klitschko versus Joshua. Who's your pick?
I'm going for Anthony Joshua.
Okay, and tell me why.
I think obviously sort of Klitschko was mentally exposed by Tyson Fury. I think Fury was probably the first man to have got inside his head and had the beating of him, and it'd be interesting to see how he's come back from that. But I think at the moment Joshua's sort of too ruthless, too powerful, and I think it will go a good sort of 6-7 rounds, but I think he'll wear him down, and I think he'll stop Klitschko.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I've never been a Vlad fan, but that's always the case. I don't like a guy until they lose, and then they have to prove themselves. Then once they're the underdog, then I start to like them. But I think Klitschko's got the experience. I think he's hungry again. And I've seen footage of Joshua getting knocked silly. So I think if anyone's going to do it, it can be Klitschko. We'll see, though. I think it's going to be a great fight. I'm excited to see it. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to throw out there? I know you said you have another, you're going to defend the title in a month's time. So can you give anybody details if they want to see that or follow it?
Yeah, so as with all my competitions, I try and upload the events as and when I can in between sort of finishing the event. So I'll be putting them up on my page throughout the day. The event's the Britain's Strongest Disabled Man this year is going to be held on Sunday the 14th of May from 11 a.m. sort of British time. So yeah, on that day I'll sort of be trying to sort of keep people posted on how it's going, and then from there hopefully doing enough to, well, ideally I'd like to obviously win it again. It's such an amazing sort of feeling, but this year my goal, after sort of how well the Arnolds went, is to sort of have a real push at winning the Worlds this year.
Now, where is Worlds at?
We're quite lucky. It's in England this year. It's being held in the Olympic Village in London in September.
All right, so maybe that's a sign. Do you have any shout outs you want to give? Anyone you want to give give a shout out to? Maybe some sponsors, plugs, anything like that?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Like I said, my 2 trips to America, obviously the first time with the Phil Heath Classic, and more recently when I went over to compete in the Arnolds. Neither of those trips would have been possible without the support of my regiment on both occasions, and in times in between. You'll hear that some veterans have different experiences once they've been discharged from the forces after their injuries, and I'm in a very fortunate position that our regiment really look after us, and I've no doubt that will be the case for the rest of my life, whether it's been for funding for wheelchairs, crutches, and anything that's sort of helped me. They've still supported me, and yeah, obviously I can't sort of thank them enough, because without that support, obviously the trips to America and in turn being able to sort of reach more people and make a name for myself, on this sort of this new journey that I'm on, they've played a large part in helping make that possible. And yeah, so obviously they deserve a lot of thanks. My wife does. She's been,
I can imagine.
yeah, she's been on the receiving end of me trying to come to terms with losing my army career, even more so than losing my leg. She's helped me in and out of baths. She's washed me, clothed me, shaved me, and been there to sort of cheer me on at every competition that I've done. So yeah, obviously if she didn't agree with all of this, then I probably wouldn't be about to sort of go and try and defend Britain's strongest. And then obviously as I've sort of made more of a name for myself, I've been lucky enough to have people get on board and want to support me on this journey. So my sponsors, Express Coffee, Cerberus Strength, and the Treatment Lab, they've sort of really helped me when it comes to sort of physio, when it comes to strongman kit, to be able to give me the sort of best opportunity to have a real good go at winning the worlds. So yeah, without all of that support, I'd still just be Mark Smith. So
I doubt that, but well, big shout out to all those guys. Sounds like with your wife, you found a keeper. I think it's fair to say that. Well, it's been awesome, man. I really, really, really appreciate you being a guest on the show. Honestly, I can say this has probably been one of my favorite interviews I've done. Your story is amazing. I feel like we could easily keep talking for another hour and a half. Yeah, I'll let you go. But before I let you go, one thing that I like to do is every guest I have on, I like to ask them to share some sort of words of wisdom, whether it be a quote, whether it be something that you live by, anything that can help somebody possibly watching the show right now. What would you tell them?
I think from day one, even whilst I was still in intensive care, the outlook was quite negative from sort of surgeons, doctors, of my chances of walking again, my chances of sort of being able to use the leg as opposed to it just being there for show, really. And I remember sort of laying there in bed for hours upon hours, determined to move that leg. And I remember it must have been after a whole evening, I managed to move my amputated leg, and I pressed my buzzer, and the nurses come along, and I said, look, I can move the leg. And the surgeons weren't sure how I was doing it, but I was. And, you fast forward on a couple of years after that, I was told with the lack of muscle that I've got left because of the tourniquets, they took my hamstrings, my adductors. I've only got one working quad muscle. I've lost some of my glutes. That I was missing all the things you needed to be able to run on a running blade. And I pestered and pestered every week without fail to let me attempt running. And on my last day at Headley Court, before I was medically discharged, I completed 400 meters on a running track. And it was like, yet again, sort of that mentality of sort of proving wrong. And I think people should use those people that say you can't do something or shouldn't do something just as fuel to go and prove that you can do it. Whether it's, there's lads I compete alongside now with far worse sort of situations of my own, doing far greater things than I'm doing. And so, they inspire me and motivate me, and they give me sort of no excuses but to try my hardest. And, hopefully my posts and what I'm doing can help other people to sort of push themselves. But yeah, I think the one thing I would say is that don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. And if they do, just go out and prove to them that you can do it.
I love it, man. That's deep. All right. So make sure to get me ways that we can follow you, as far as your Facebook page, if you have a YouTube channel, a website, whatever, events, things like that. Shoot me that information. I'll post it on the video comments below. So anyone watching this, if you want to follow Mark, just go ahead and check the comments, and all that'll be right there. But again, man, it's been an honor. I appreciate you sharing your story. It's definitely very inspirational. And I look forward to possibly doing some things together in the future, man.
Yeah,
For being on the show. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time this evening, and for having me on, and for persisting as well.
Yeah, you know, if something's good, you're gonna go out of your way to make it happen. So it definitely was worth it, man. Thanks again, dude.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really appreciated.
All righty, well, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And today's episode was brought to you by Barbell Nutrition and our current product, Thermite. It's a fat loss pre-workout. Even helps with building muscle. So if you're interested, check it out, barbellnutrition.com. Message me, get you a discount. And thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.